62 paragraphs referencing the Underworld in ancient Sumerian cuneiform tablets that have been translated via Oxford University scholars. What you're looking at next to me are the project members that have done a very good job spending a lot of time dissecting and translating these ancient scribes of antiquity, timeless information. And I'm going to get into the really, I guess you could say, nitty gritty. I'm going to dive deep into the underworld analysis, what they're referring to. Are they referring to life after this physical existence? Are they referring to a hollow earth? Or are they referring to life above ground, like what we're doing now? And the reason I bring up these possibilities is because there's poems and stories and texts that point to each of those scenarios. Could they be talking about all three? And let me kind of start off with this. So I'm going to give my analysis on all three possibilities, and I really look forward to hearing your replies. But let's get started on the Inanna's descent to the netherworld. I think this one's really important. So from the great heaven, she set her mind on the great below. From the great heaven, the goddess set her mind on the great below. From the great heaven, Inanna set her mind on the great below. My mistress abandoned heaven, abandoned earth, and descended to the underworld. Inanna abandoned heaven, abandoned earth, and descended to the underworld. So could this be a timeless story of the casting down of our higher consciousness into this physical state of existence with certain limitations? Maybe these stories have been passed on since the beginning of time created. An interesting perspective on the burying and deceased versus, an interesting perspective on burying the deceased versus burning the deceased is in a ancient text called Gilgamesh and Enkidu and the Netherworld. And I've read that to you guys before, but let me read to you a couple parts out of this one right here, because he's asked, he goes, did you see him who had no respect for the word of his mother and father? And he's talking about what it was like in the netherworld. I saw him. How does he fare? Oh, my body, oh, my limbs. He never ceases to cry. Did you see him who was reached by the curse of his mother and father? I saw him. How does he fare? He is deprived of an heir. His spirit roams about. And then let's get down to where it says, did you see him who was set on fire? I did not see him. His smoke went up to the sky. His spirit does not live in the underworld. Now, I need to look up how many times the netherworld is put in these texts. As you can see right here, a really cool search feature is you can type in the search box under basic a specific word, and it'll pull up how many times you can find it in these translated cuneiform tablets. Now, underworld is referred to in 62 paragraphs. When I typed in netherworld, I just typed it in one word, so it didn't show up. But if I type it in two words, then I can see how many times it comes up. So let's do that real quick. Netherworld. 62 paragraphs. It seems to me that, I wonder if the netherworld and the underworld are two different things, or if they're one and of the same. So let me give you some more of this analysis now. So does that mean when you bury somebody, when you bury a body, that it goes to the underworld and then it's going to be a cyclical event? It's going to be recycled, the spirit reincarnated. What about if you burn the body? Does that mean your spirit goes into the heavens? That you can actually be broken from this physical recycling center if that's what you're looking for? And that makes me think of some of the Book of the Dead hieroglyphics that I saw recently that showed the cat cutting the snake. And it spooked me out at first because I thought it was like cutting eternity, like pulling the plug. And maybe for some it's pulling the plug at a lower conscious level, yet maybe that's cutting the cord to allow for a higher level of consciousness. So it's very interesting to say the least that now I'm finding these texts in conjunction with that. And then somebody left a comment about how that might be what it is, and that's why I started thinking that afterwards. Thank you very much. I mean, you should definitely read some of the comments at the leakproject.com, youtube.com/clandestine time lord on our YouTube channel. Very intelligent people on there. There's a lot of trolls too, but a lot more intelligent comments and very eclectic individuals, eccentric individuals, high IQ, looking for the truth. So it's really cool. So thank you everybody that helped support Leak Project in every fashion. I'm highly appreciative of you. So there's multiple references of Inanna's descent to the underworld and the ascent requiring a sacrifice replacement from the underworld. And that reminds me of a deal with the devil. You know, give one up for yourself, and then it can turn into a domino effect. You know, one lie turns into another, etc. And that just makes me think of the physical bondage that the Gnostics talked about in that secret book of John that I read to you guys yesterday on Leak Project. One of my favorite Gnostic texts. And then another interesting point that's brought up in these various paragraphs of antiquity, of these Sumerian tablets, talks about the powers in the underworld and the ways of the underworld. And once you get those powers, then you can't go back. And also remember, the 3 days and 3 nights of Inanna going to the underworld predates the Jesus story by thousands of years, and a lot of people think Inanna could actually be a reference of Jesus. So, Father Enlil, now let's take this back for a minute though. If you look at the modern version of Jesus, then it doesn't fit very many parameters of what you would think of as Inanna, because she seems to be she likes to have fun and not let things get in her way. Let's just put it that way. Hopefully now, if she is a being, if she is a god, you know, she's calmed down and grown up and realized that these beings aren't just like cockroaches or, you know, little ticks or something like that. I don't know. I mean, hope so. She's looking over my shoulder right now, so. Anyway, so powers in the underworld, ways of the underworld. And then you get into Father Enlil. Don't let your daughter Inanna be killed in the underworld. Don't let her metal forge with the earth. That is referenced when Inanna goes to the underworld, and she has her mistress go to Enlil and Enki to try and bring her back. And then remember, she also has her messenger cut herself up really bad all over her body, you know, gashing her body, even her eyeballs and her butt. It's just bizarre. And I wonder what that ritual was for. I mean, it makes me think of some of the blood rituals and some of the voodoo practices where you can take certain parts of somebody's, you know, you could take somebody's hair and intertwine it with a doll, and if you know what you're doing, then you could make a voodoo doll. And I probably shouldn't have said that, but it just came out and flowed, so you guys could look it up anyway on the internet. It's easy to do. It's not like I'm telling you something you couldn't find out. So we'll just leave it at that. You just forgot everything I just said about the voodoo doll. You just forgot everything I just said about the voodoo doll. All right, so Father Enlil, don't let your daughter Inanna be killed in the underworld. And then I thought that was interesting about how the references of don't let her metal forge with the earth. So the metal, is that referring to her soul? Is that referring to a part of her spirit essence or something? I don't know. Creation of demons and mystical creatures are discussed in these Sumerian texts. And one of the creatures is actually referenced in modern games now, and folklore and involved and intertwined in these games that are available. It's interesting, a lot of these video games, they'll take deities and gods and ancient mythos and cultures and put it in and link into these characters. And it makes me think of the Archons, how, now I'm not talking about the Archon Annunaki that the Gnostics refer to in some of the texts. I'm referring to the serpent Archons that you don't see with your physical eyes unless you know the magical key word, Hugh. And if these deities travel through electricity, if they travel through different realms and attach onto the physical body, but aren't allowed into these physical realms, like it's referred to, then it would make perfect sense that video games could be created and they could live through these video games. And they could totally, I mean, what if it gets so deep that some of these video games now that the graphics are so deep and so depth. I've thought about this even back in the 8-bit Nintendo days. And I remember when the 8-bit Nintendo was popular, just the regular Nintendo, and how I envisioned this, I think, when the Super Nintendo came out. So a little bit later, I envisioned games that have been around now for some time that, you're just so much detail where you can go into a store, you can open up the cabinets, and you can interact with your background and the artificial intelligence algorithms that are playing the characters and stuff like that. I envisioned that when I was just a little kid. I envisioned the smartphone before it came out. I remember I was showing it off to my parents and my grandparents and my aunts and my uncles all at a big dinner that we had one time. Not a dinner, I'm sorry. It was a breakfast that we had one time, and I had it all written out and everything. And I'm sure you guys did too. I mean, nothing's new under the sun. It's, that's what just makes me think, if you have an idea, the only reason I'm bringing that up is if you have an idea, I guess it's best to just bring it, to get it patented as quick as possible, to get it on the market as quick as possible, because if you're thinking about it, somebody else is. So, anyway, enough about that. Let's go back to these mystical creatures. And this mystical creature, one of the mystical creatures, is created to bring Annunaki back from the Underworld. And the creature is actually created with the filth of what's underneath Enki's fingertip, underneath his fingernail. And I'll bet you, though, it's more likely the DNA that he took, not the filth of the fingernail, but that's how it was described by the scribe, by the Sumerian scribe that wrote it out. Most likely the DNA. So another creature, another being was created with this DNA, and that makes me think, once again, the Annunaki, the Akkadians, potato, tomato, they were manipulating stuff, guys. There's plenty of evidence out there. They were genetically modifying beings and entities and maybe even, obviously bringing people back from the dead. They were bringing people back from the dead. Literally bringing people back from the dead. I think this story, I don't think it's the underworld the underworld that she went to, I think is the afterlife. I think it was beyond this physical vibrational realm, the other side, breaking into the veil of the other side. And then when you read about it, the scribe that wrote about it took information from another text, and that text was taken from another text and, from a picture or drawing or a carving or something, or passed down in stories. And so that's how they come up with these different words and the doors and the symbols, and it makes sense at a symbolic level, and maybe to them at the time more so than it does to us now. Yet my thought is, this is not the center of the earth, unless the center of the earth does have some type of soul matrix, or, soul manipulator, soul harvester, soul recycler, soul connecting, soul mover. Something that can move the soul and push it in a certain direction, like a railroad system or something like that, some type of tunnel system. You know where I'm going with that. So when Annunaki goes to the other side, when she goes to the netherworld and she gets these powers and obtains these abilities, then she comes out of it because of Enki using some type of DNA to bring her back, some type of DNA technology, probably frequency technology as well, to bring her back into that form, literally find her spirit out there in the netherworld, pull it back in to her physical body. And then since then, that's probably what the Egyptians were trying to do, maybe with some success, when you see all these just incredible hieroglyphics that show what was done. And then when they find these pharaohs that have been near perfectly dissected from the inside out somehow, like taking their brains out of their body without having, without them able to find how they were able to take the brains out. So they used to tell you in school, they just pulled it out with a puck through the nose and then perfectly put it back together. Yeah, right. Timeshare. So maybe the Egyptians took that tech and just went with it. Hello, bingo. I think I just hit a key point right there, and you guys maybe know this already, so I'm just excited for myself here. But I think that's a key point, that Annunaki was literally brought back from the other side, and that story that we're taught throughout scriptures and passages and different languages and different names for the same being continues to go on. And being already at a demigod status, going to the other side and then coming back, bringing powers and such. Imagine where that would take your stature. And maybe when she came back from that, she was a different person. Maybe that was the way that she went to a higher vibration of less war, less physical form, more so in a higher spiritual essence, because she could see the other side and maybe have sympathy and empathy for those instead of just complete dominance that's written about in these ancient writings that are probably, easily 10,000, 20,000 years old. The errata people that predate the Sumerians by 20,000 years. They were building temples like Göbekli Tepe. If they could build Göbekli Tepe, you don't think they can write? Timeshare. So these texts could, let's go back 27,000 years. And then, if you want to follow the Sumerian kings list that dates back 250,000 years, that doesn't mean the Sumerians were 250,000 years old. That means a scribe took information of 250,000 years worth of kings, put it into a list that was labeled in the archaeological communities as the Sumerians list. So it just had, that's where you get into the problems with labels and words, is they're so limiting, especially with specific patterns and languages and the way people think. Inside the box, inside the Borg cube, inside the cult of Saturn, inside the Saturn power grid matrix harvesting network, Archon angle interface. And folks, even though we're inside the Borg, we're outside the hive mind. I'm outside the hive mind most of the time. I have my divagation moments where I digress. All right, so let's get into this. And Adab to Nergal for Su Ilsu, Lord, who like his own father, Nunamer, has the power to create life. Nergal, endured house, Underworld, you are the junior Enlil. It is in your power to determine destinies, to render judgments, and to make decisions. Nergal, your great hands are filled with mighty actions and terrible powers. Great rights, which are revealed to no one, are organized for you. Nergal, among this people, it is you who take charge of the divine plans and the purification rites. So, this sounds like a new king, the new king, Lord Nergal, like his own father, Nunamer. The power to create life is this cloning technology. Enduring house. So these guys clone themselves and keep cloning themselves and keep cloning themselves and cloning themselves so they don't go to the underworld. Maybe they're scared what's on the other side. Maybe when we go to the other side, we meet people that we knew here, right? So what about these guys? This just came into my mind also. What if when you go to the other side, if you were a really bad person, and, let's look at some of these dictators that had genocide on their people, that caused genocide on their people. Do they meet all those people on the other side? Is that what hell actually is? Is that the universal karma? They meet the people that they destroyed on the other side. So maybe if you are a demigod and you took out millions, hundreds of millions, billions of people, and they're on the other side waiting for you, maybe that's not where you want to go. So maybe you'll do whatever you can to stay in this particular vibrational frequency, so therefore you don't have to face the consequences. You don't have to pay the piper. I don't know. This is all just stuff that's going through my mind based upon the research that I've done and what I feel that I know thus far. And I think most of you guys feel probably similar or probably have similar thoughts and feel the same way about things. Maybe not everything, but I'm sure some of this resonates with you. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be here listening to me. So unless you're just, wanting, of course, to make fun of me, and hey, I get it. If you want to just watch me to make fun of me, that's cool. I get it. Trust me. Now, let's get into Enki and the world order again. This is another passage out of Enki and the world order. He filled the Ekur, the house of Enlil. Now remember, Ekur is Mount Olympus in Greek mythos. The Ekur is the house of the gods, where these people, these beings, made the decisions, where they gathered, kind of like the White House in D.C. Yet, these are the Olympian gods, Mount Olympus, or Sumerian gods, or Akkadian gods, or Radian gods. The engineers, the manipulators, and they're still manipulating things. They're still engineering things, folks. Just turn on the television set. Just walk outside and look up as they're blasting the beautiful blue skies with chemical trill, stratospheric aerosol injections. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out they're still running the show. They're just now supposedly in myth. It's just all a myth, ladies and gentlemen. All these stories is all folklore. Just read that one guy's book, how he debunked Zecharia Sitchin. So that means everything's fake. It means everything's fake, and never mind. I'm not going to get into that, but here we go. Now I broke this down in detail right here. So there's a whole bunch of words in here that you might not know what those titles are. I broke them down, and it makes me understand it better, and it should make it easier to explain it to you, because with all these different titles, you can read it so many times, and unless you really know what that title represents, you're missing key components. You guys know. So he filled the Ekur, the house of Enlil. He fills up the Mount Olympus with possessions. So he puts a bunch of stuff in there, whether it's gold, silver, weapons, food, women, all of the above, because Annunaki like women. I'm just saying. Look at the Nephilim that, the fallen angels that had sex with women, pissed off Enlil, pissed off God. So what did he do? He caused a flood because these guys wanted to get it on. They got horny. That's what it comes down to. So even gods get horny, folks. Isn't that crazy? So he filled the Ekur, the house of Enlil, with possessions. I'm just having a little fun here, so lighten up if you're mad at me now. Enlil was delighted with Enki, and Nibru was glad. So Enlil is very happy with Enki because Enki brings all this stuff, to their headquarters, and Nibru's glad as well. So is Nibiru now? So Nibiru's glad. Okay. So is Nibiru the city that Mount Olympus is in? Did we just connect another dot there? And is there another Nibiru that is in the heavens? I don't know. You tell me. I haven't been able to verify that yet, but I have read a lot of stuff that points to that possibility, that there's both. So he set the borders, he fixed the boundaries for the Annunagods. Now, who are the Annunagods? The Annunagods are the gods of the underworld. So he's setting up shop and establishing boundaries, and he's set, okay, the underworld gods, you guys are here. This is your position. You can't go into this area. So he's setting things up, and he's filling up his house with treasures. The capital of the gods, the demigods. So the Annunagods are not the Anunnaki. They are, according to what the scribes that talked about in Sumerian times thought, at least anyway, was they were below them. So Enki situated dwellings in cities and disposed agriculture, land into fields. Enki placed in charge of the whole heaven and earth. The hero, the bull who comes out of the Hasur forest, bellowing truculently, the youth Utu, the bull standing triumphantly, audaciously, majestically, the father of the great city, an expression for the underworld, the great herald in the east of Holy On, the judge who searches out verdicts of the gods, or verdicts for the gods, with a lapis lazuli beard rising from the horizon into the holy heavens, Utu, the son born by Ningal. So, the Kurgara is what I was able to connect to when I found the bull who comes out of the Hasur forest. That was the only connection that I could find, except for thinking to myself, the bull could be the Taurus bull that's referred to in cosmology and astronomy in the heavens, the bull who comes out of the Hasur forest. I'm sorry, Hasur is actually a location. My bad. Hasur is a location. I had a little bit of a harp-on moment there. Alaska got me for just a second. So, hold a second. Let me rub my nipple. Okay, much better. That's for you, Conan O'Brien. Have me on your show. All right. So, he sets up the borders, fixes the boundaries. Enki places in charge of the whole heaven. Okay. Enki's placed in charge of the whole of heaven and earth, the hero, the bull who comes out of the Hasur forest bellowing, and then the youth Utu. So does that mean that Utu is now considered the cosmic god? They're linking Utu to the cosmic Taurus that we see and have for thousands of years, the heavens, the gods in the heavens. They're linking somebody here to that archetype, to that entity for strength, for, they're like looking up to him as that, to put him on a pedestal, because that's a form of magic. That's a form of ancient worship magic, and it also has a hierarchical order, keeping order of the masses as well. I mean, people have been practicing rituals to follow the stars since the beginning of time, at least since as far back as I can tell. So, Kurgara. We're going to get into Kurgara in a minute. Kurgara is that mystical beast that was created to bring back Inanna from Enki's fingernail. They call it from his fingernail filth. Utu is the twin of Inanna, the a.k.a. Ishtar, Wonder Woman. Annuna is the god of the underworld. Annuna is the gods of the underworld. And Kiur is the netherworld, a.k.a. underworld. So, Father Nana is equaling sin in today's, there's Annunaki mention or Akkadian mention of sin, not the sin that you think of as sinning, but actually a deity named Sin, a moon deity, which is also, people would say, oh yeah, well that's where they came up with the word sin, was because of that moon deity. It's all that person's fault. So I think this is just awesome, and I wanted to share this with you guys. Much appreciated you being here with me. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. What in the heck are you waiting for? YouTube.com/clandestine Time Lord. A lot of times people have told me that they've subscribed and then somehow they get unsubscribed. So make sure to stay subscribed, and also check back daily for updates, because I do my best to do at least 4 shows a day. And as soon as I have a studio, folks, maybe some air conditioning in the studio as well, I'm going to bring you 10 shows a day. So also I'm working more on the live shows, and I'm still putting together a time specifically on the live shows, but I appreciate everybody that comes to those. I've had some opportunities lately that I've been doing these live streams, and I'm not going to say it's internet gremlins or aliens or anything. I'm just saying it's probably internet alien gremlins. No, I'm just kidding, but something's going on where I'm not able to provide live streams without a whole bunch of serious lag, no matter how good my internet is, and I've got awesome internet, and it seems to happen when I do research in specific topics. So I guess I'll just have to bring them to you pre-recorded until we can get this resolved. Thank you once again for being here with me, ladies and gentlemen. And also, if you want to become a premium member at leakproject.com, it's $10 a month, $50 for the whole year. It's like a 60% discount, and it greatly supports Leak Project. It helps me out a lot, do as many shows as I can. And then, hey, maybe I'll even be able to have an air conditioner here sooner or later. That's okay. Forget the air conditioner. I don't need one of those things. I like being in the sauna anyway. This is much better. Thank you, guys. Have a good one. Be excellent to each other. Question everything, and be the change you want to see.